This video is brought to you by MoviePalette.com. Hey everyone, do you have a favorite movie that you would love to hang on your wall but you can't think of what scene or what poster to get? Well, now you can get the entire movie on one high quality canvas. With MoviePalette.com, you can get every scene from your favorite movie, or more specifically, the dominant color of every scene from your favorite movie in chronological order on a great high quality canvas. It also comes with a silver engraving of the title down at the bottom. It has rubber stoppers on the back to keep it from bouncing. And they have a huge catalog of what to choose from. Whether you're a horror fan or a fan of sci-fi, Marvel, Japanese anime, Disney animation, drama, or Oscar classics, there's a movie palette for you. And right now, MoviePalette.com is having a sale for 50% off for their Halloween sale. But if you go right now and if you enter room 15, you'll get 15% off of the movie palette of your choice. That's ROOM15 for 15% off of your movie palette. Again, this is a great value for a great piece of home decor that looks great for any film and for any film buff and anywhere in your home. You will definitely like this product. Mine is of The Shining, and I could not be happier with it. So definitely go to MoviePalette.com and enter ROOM15 for 15% off of your palette. Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, back with another review. As I continue my month of October run through of Stephen King film adaptations and anthology horror films. And it's been a couple weeks since I've done a Stephen King film, so I figured I'd go back and do another one. This is one that I do not own. I found this for free on YouTube. And it's one that I've never seen. I've always known about it. I've always known the title. Always known it was kind of a revenge story, but never really knew what it was about. I knew it dealt with greasers and a kid's brother, but that was about it. I remember seeing the cover and the cover of the sequels at the video store when I was a kid. I don't plan on seeing and reviewing the sequels, at least not anytime soon. It's kind of like a Children of the Corn, where it's unneeded sequels, unrelated sequels. But this is one I was surprised by. I thought this was going to be another 90s forgotten, really bad adaptation. That poster keeps falling. More along the lines of, I don't really want to say Graveyard Shift, but maybe something like Lawnmower Man or The Mangler. Just a bad movie that's been forgotten. It is a TV movie. I think TV movies are treated a little bit differently than a miniseries. I think a miniseries is still treated as like a television series. I think TV movies might have a little bit bigger of a budget. But in any case, whether it be a TV movie or a miniseries, TV, of all the TV Stephen King movies, this was actually one of the better ones. I would put this over, Langoliers, maybe Rose Red. I'd put this over The Shining. Probably not The Stand. I just think is really overrated. Put this over the Tommyknockers, at least what I remember of it. I do think it is one of the better ones, and it's 1991's Sometimes They Come Back, which originally was supposed to be a segment in the 85 anthology Cat's Eye, which is a bit of an underrated anthology film. And that could have worked because it is based on a short story. In fact, it was a short story in his first collection, Night Shift, which, as I've said before, of all of his short story collection books, I think this one has had the most adaptations to come out of it. It definitely could have worked as a anthology segment. Parts of it kind of reminded me of like a Tales from the Crypt episode. kind of in tone, well, not tone, because it does have this dark tone. It does get a bit schmaltzy and trying too hard to be sweet and pull at your heartstrings towards the end. But I do like the kind of story that it is. It, it was put out by the Dino De Laurentiis company, which put out Cat's Eye, which is why they were going to put it in Cat's Eye. It got scrapped, became its own movie. It does show the main character watching the Dino De Laurentiis 76 King Kong, which I loved when I was a young kid. So I thought that was a cool nod. But this was directed by Tom McLoughlin, who directed Friday the 13th Part 6. His wife, who was also in Part 6, appears in this. Written by Lawrence Connor and Mark Rosenthal, who did the teleplay. Which Mark Rosenthal also... He wrote Superman 4, but I think there was a lot of issues with that as far as credits. He wrote Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, which I'm not a fan of. The remake of Roots. A lot of big movies, actually. And it stars Tim Matheson, Otter from Animal House. He was in a made-for-TV movie, Buried Alive, either the same year, the year before, which I really enjoyed. That I've also reviewed. Brooke Adams, who was in 78's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Dead Zone. I've seen her in a few things. What am I thinking of where I've seen her? The Stuff. Huh. So yeah, she's been in a few things. Robert Ressler, not Robert Ressler, the famous FBI profiler, but Robert Ressler, who played Grady in Elm Street 2, which is kind of funny. 6 years later, he's still playing a high schooler. I thought he did a good job. Terry Plumeri did the score. And yeah, it aired May 7th of 91. And it had 2 sequels. Sometimes they come back, ... again. Then sometimes they come back, ... for more, which is set in the Arctic. I have no interest in seeing those, as I've said. Okay, the car was a 55 Chevy 150. I thought it was either a Chevy or a Buick, but apparently the story was first published in a 74 issue of Cavalier, but then recollected Night Shift. And also Tim Matheson's son is played by Robert Hy Gorman, who people might recognize as the youngest kid in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, the young kid in Leprechaun. So it was really cool to see him in this. He was also in that one movie I've seen a couple times as a kid, a Rookie of the Year. Just one of those 90s kids, like the young kid from A Bronx Tale. Just one of those kids that just total 90s kid actors that popped up in a lot of things. Now, yes, this movie does kind of suffer from its TV budget, but it does do the smart thing of not trying to go overly supernatural or trying to be a big effects film, which I thought worked. Except for when you get to the ending where there's like portals to like heaven, where it starts to look like Quantum Leap. Whereas the greasers just kind of appear. We don't see how they come back. So I thought that was kind of out of place, plus the effects are kind of wonky. People can say that the effects with the train are super cheesy, low budget, and crappy, I'm always a sucker for that. It literally looks like just a model train, a miniature, but I'm always a sucker for that. I think there's great charm in that. I mean, I believe it's Faust from 1920s, where it's just like a view over this uh, a miniature town, kind of like the opening to Beetlejuice, but it's meant to look real. I always like when there's a miniatures or like a model like a electric train as a big train, and yes, it is hitting like a model or toy car, but I think there's charm in that. But I also think because Tom McLaughlin is so inspired by Golden Age Hollywood, I mean, that's why Friday the 13th Part 6 has a lot of like references and stylistic choices of like the 30s and 40s Universal era. So I think just a lot of that just has to do with his influence from Golden Age Hollywood. And I thought it was fine. Now, the story, I do like these kinds of stories, which it didn't quite go in this direction, but like where a character, there's this threat, and the only people that know it's a threat is the lead and the threat itself. And all these things happen so that to the outside world, it looks like the lead is a responsible and just kind of goes put through the ringer that way. Uh, just to give a quick example, uh, Vera Farmiga's character in Orphan, how she looks like she's going crazy and treating this girl badly, even though the orphan is evil. And I know that one mention of Orphan, all the comments are going to be asking when I'm reviewing First Kill. I'll get to it eventually. Talk about this movie. It didn't quite go that route. I mean, it started to. I was like, okay, I like those kinds of stories. But then something happens that just kind of alleviates Tim Matheson from suspicion to everyone. But 27 years ago, in 1963, Tim Matheson, Jim, and his older brother Wayne were walking to school. They're going to walk through this train tunnel and this 1955 Chevy 150 with these three grease, three greasers and I think an older guy, or these four greasers with Robert Rustler as the lead, pull up. They start taunting them, and it leads to the death of the older brother. Train comes, hits the car with all the greasers in it. And now we're 27 years later. Tim Matheson is grown up Jim. He's a teacher. They moved back to their hometown. I think even in the same house, but I could be wrong. And he starts having dreams about that accident. And a series of kids from his class are being killed off or committing suicide in very weird fashions. And each time one does, a member of the uh, greaser gang replaces them in their classroom. And they are made to look responsible. Like the first kid is a kid on his bike being chased by the car. No one else can see the car but the kid and Tim Matheson, who's trying to catch up. And the car makes the kid go off a bridge on his bike, dies. Next day, Robert Rustler comes in as the new student, and so on. So each time a kid dies, a member replaces them. And I do think the cast did a good job, especially Tim Matheson, especially Robert Rustler. But and I don't know if it was Rustler or which one of the group it was, but there's always this like constant high-pitched hyena laugh that I always find annoying. It's sort of like the stereotypical horror movie bad guy laugh. I mean, like there's like two or three guys in the original Day of the Dead that do that. It always grates on my nerves. Just this high pitched, maniacal hyena laugh. It's not a detriment to the film. It's just something I thought was kind of annoying. And they taunt Tim Matheson. They talk to him like he's still the kid from 27 years ago. But then whenever the principal is around and Tim Matheson tries to... It does do a good job. Like, they're taunting him in the boys' bathroom. So, like, he grabs Robert Russell, pins him against the lockers. And then that's when their demeanor shifts. And they're like, hey, cool, man, come on, what are you doing? And making him look bad because the principal's watching. Stuff like that for, like, the first half. Also makes him look responsible for the deaths of all these students. And no one suspects these greasers. And everyone suspects Tim Matheson. And you get the idea that this is something that's happened before. Maybe not to this extent, but like dreams or sort of projecting in some way. It kind of has this theme of how the traumas of the past can follow you, and you can either run from it, it'll just be a part of your life consistently, or you just face it. I don't know if that's like the A24 a metaphor to take away from it, but that's what I saw. And it's really just leading up to like righting the wrongs of that day of the accident in the train tunnel. And overall, I thought this was a decent movie. For a TV movie, much better made than some other King films. I wouldn't quite call it underrated. I see why some people might call it cheesy or corny or just not that good. I found myself thinking, okay, this is going to be kind of a bad movie. But not too long into it, I was actually finding myself engaged and wanting to see what happened next. Towards the end, it does follow a lot of similar tropes because we do see the flashback that the brother was stabbed more or less by accident. Like, yes, Rustler did take out a switchblade, but then the greasers were pushing the brother around, and when they pushed him, he ran into the knife. And the reason why they couldn't drive away from the train is because their key was on a rabbit's foot keychain that Jim took when he ran away. So that's where the revenge comes in. I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, was thinking, like, why did the bullies get to come back for revenge when they were assholes? Which also, I want to see who played that one jock. Because I will say the jock was a pretty bad actor. And I will say the kid that played the older brother was not that good either. Which... The brother was in The New Adventures of Superman, Secret Adventures of Jules Verne, Dallas, J.R. Returns, one episode of Star Trek Next Generation, Blossom. He was in a Dolly Dearest, lots of TV, Blank Check, one episode of Batman Beyond, one episode of CSI. I didn't think he was a good actor. The jock I thought was annoying. We do get to see the jock get killed. And there is kind of a Tales from the Crypt camp to it as well, because the greasers can turn into their undead form, like what they would look like after the accident. Which Robert Rustler kind of looks like a burnt up version of the Creep from Creepshow 2. Another one is basically just mangled mess with like big bulging eyeballs and a messed up jaw. The effects look cool, so they can kind of change their appearance when they want to scare people. And I thought the effects those makeup effects were actually pretty decent for a TV movie. But then again, nothing we hadn't seen in like Tales from the Crypt. Uh, so yeah, I thought it was decent, but yeah, some of the tropes. Uh, Tim Matheson he's trying to find the fourth member that got away, who I think was an older guy in like a mechanic jumpsuit. In order to find him, he has to go find this cop that was sitting by the road when he ran away and was running back home. But the cop is in a retirement home. And we've seen this hundreds of times in like a 90s horror movie where, oh, if you're looking for old man whoever, he's up at Shady Acres. You got to go get answers from him. And there's exposition up there, which he's able to just explain how and why they come back, and how, you know, for each person that dies, another one can come back. And it's all leading to recreating the events of the Day of the Tunnel. So, spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen it. It's not anything really new. We've pretty much seen stuff like this before. But I do like the idea of having these greasers and trying to make them look innocent to the outside world, and him kind of trying to look like the bad guy. You know, I like those kinds of stories. I will, even though the ending does try to pull at your heartstrings and tries a little too hard to be schmaltzy, it is kind of different. There was an aspect to it that I did like, and I think a lot of people are confused by it, but something I took from it kind of makes sense, and there was an aspect I liked. So, and it is better. It is a better story. It's better acted. Probably a better production values than a lot of King TV movies of that time. So, and not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, the greasers take Tim Matheson's wife and son as insurance. They go back to the tunnel. Tim Matheson gets that fourth guy that ran away, and they're pretty much recreating everything. And why the greasers can get revenge is because Jim took their key that was on the rabbit's foot, caused their death. And they end up stabbing that fourth guy, because the fourth guy, you know, starts defending Tim Matheson. He ends up getting stabbed, so since someone got killed, another can come back, this being the older brother. Which there's like this big strip opening of light, kind of like Quantum Leap. And like I said, where the greasers just appear, we don't see how they cross into our world. It felt kind of out of place, especially effects-wise, and the effects are shoddy. But I guess they had to make it look like, you know, good and evil. And again, they recreate it. But this time when the train comes, he does toss the keys back, so now it's up to them. Like, if they die, it's their fault, which they do get hit. And not that it was too intense, really, but it was engaging at best. But then the schmaltzy part was, you know, the scene between the older brother and Tim Matheson, where he looks at Tim Matheson's son, the kid from Leprechaun, who's wearing a ball cap that he gave Jim when they were kids, and then Tim Matheson gave it to him. There were some kind of nods to Stand By Me. I mean, the whole thing about train tracks in a very compromising way, but instead of a high bridge, now it's a tunnel, still nowhere to go. Whole thing of an older brother that died, but being given a hat from him. Greasers. Yeah. Kind of, some parts did remind me of Stand By Me. And some people seem to think that the older brother did not realize that he was dead, because he thinks the son is Jimmy. But then Tim Matheson has to say, no, that's my son. I'm Jimmy. He's like, no, Jimmy's my little brother. He's small. I grew up. I don't think it's that he didn't realize he was dead. I think he just didn't realize how much time had passed and how much he had missed of his brother's life. But I do like that aspect, because normally in a scene like this, it's like, come with me. I can't. I have to be there for my family. Or like, please don't go. Stay. It's like, I can't stay. My time is done. Your family needs you. Which, that's kind of there, but it does add this aspect. And again, trying too hard to be sad or schmaltzy or heartfelt. The whole, like, you know, it's like, I am your brother. I just grew up. It's been so long. And him not realizing, you know, like how much time had passed. And the whole, like, I can't go with you, but you'll always be in my heart. And then his wife and kid look super cool about it. She's just like, Wayne, Jim loves you very much, but we need him. And he goes, and that's the end of the movie. And, yeah, I actually didn't realize this was a made-for-TV movie as I was watching it, but I kept thinking, like, there's a lot of, like, this isn't a super R-rated movie. Like, there hasn't been language. It's not overly violent. Like, it's not a bloody movie. When they do kill the jock, you see from a distance they're throwing all these body parts with clothes still on them out the window, but that's about it. It does have a TV look feel to it. Again, like some scenes almost look like it's ripped straight from Tales from the Crypt, quality-wise, production-wise. There's also like a lot of fade to blacks transitions. And then I was reading, I was like, oh, that's why it's made for TV. But it's not a bad movie by any means. It's not bad. It's a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to be or than I expected it to be. And I would call it decent at best, but it is a lot better than a lot of other TV King movies. The only ones I might put above this would be maybe The Stand. But even The Stand has its moments. This is less corny and cheesy than The Stand. But, yeah, I would definitely say it's one of the better TV movies. But, on the other hand, I can see why this is kind of forgotten, why no one talks about it. I don't see why it needed sequels. I know the sequels are different stories, but yeah, this is one I've always known about, never got around to seeing, but I am glad that I finally checked it out. And I would say the biggest takeaways were the performances by Tim Matheson and Robert Russler. So that is King's Sometimes They Come Back. Yeah, we are nearing the end of October. I do have plans for November. I'll talk about that when we get closer, but I do want to do a couple more King films and a few more anthologies before October ends. So stay tuned for those, and thank you for watching.